So the idea of worship is it's connected to a dimension of expression or appreciation of something's worth. Now, everyone on the planet, whether they realize it or not, is a worshiper. Everybody's worshiping something. There's not a single person, I don't care how secular they are, how atheistic or agnostic they might be, they still are worshiping something, because to worship is to ascribe worth to something. Is to, out of that worth, to have an affection for, an adoration of, an appreciation of, a loyalty to, an affection for, we might say, that which you're giving worth to. And so worship is all about giving worth to something, expressing worth of something. And according to Scripture, there is a true worship and there is a false worship. Let's see if we can define the difference between the two. False worship, even from the standpoint of people who, like us, want to worship God, we must be aware that false worship is worship that just is ritualistic in nature. We go through the motions of worship, but our heart's not really in it. Sadly, there'll be a lot of people that will attend church today and they will check the box off, I went to church and I worshiped, but they really didn't worship because they didn't bring their heart into the environment. They went and fulfilled a religious obligation or went through a ritual, but there was no connection with God. That's false worship, as we'll see here in just a moment. In fact, in the Old Testament, the whole system of worship in the Old Testament was prone to this kind of falsity. Because the Old Testament system of worship involved bringing calves and oxen and goats and birds and things of that nature for sacrificial offerings to God. And you could do that without your heart being in it. You could go through a ritualistic process and never have any connection with God whatsoever. You actually externally kind of did worship, but from the heart level, there really was no worship. You weren't connecting with, relating to God. In fact, David himself talks about this in Psalm chapter 51, verses 16 and 17. Listen to what he says as he defines the difference between ritualistic worship and real worship. He's saying to God, you do not delight in sacrifice, or I would bring it. You do not take pleasure in burnt offerings. My sacrifice or my worship, O God, is a broken spirit, a broken and contrite, what's the next word there? Heart, you, God, will not despise. So David says, God, you're not all that interested in just the sacrifices. That's not what pleases you. I can bring you sacrifices all day long, but what you're looking for is the condition of my heart. Am I worshiping you from my heart?